We're back with another off the shelf. I've actually been really anticipating this one. So I've got Orv, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, volumes 2, 3, and 4. So these are the volumes in paper. 5 has also arrived. We did not read 5 to go with this. We just did 2 through 4. So Orv was the series and still is the series I've been most excited for, following up on how far we've gotten into solo leveling. And I think because in many ways it's very similar and very, very different. Because they are of the same genre. But they take two very different routes through that genre. And you liked volume 1 when we read it. So how did you feel about volumes 2 through 4?
I really like this one actually. I think look, I solemnly swear not to spend the entire episode putting down solo leveling. That's not what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do my best not to. Um, but I think I find this world very intriguing because there's even the main character who has a lot of like knowledge on how this world works because of reading the novel and being able to go back and look through that novel. Even that main character doesn't know everything about this world. They just have
He
like,
only knows about Kim Dok-ja. He knows about
yeah.
the protagonist and the characters that were followed in the perspective of the novel that was written, not everything.
So seeing him interact with it and still have to come up with like, because the scenarios are like one in like hundreds of scenarios that he read about. He doesn't remember everything in detail.
And there's a lot of human error, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
human deviancy and human error, where like he can account for what he thinks the main character will do, right? Based on previous characterization, but he basically has no characterization for side characters or those who aren't in the same node as Kim Dok-ja or his companions were, which means that there's of a lot of wild cards at all times.
I think it helps so that it feels more like he's a believable part of this world that we're seeing. So we're still exploring the world. Just he kind of has a Pokedex in his head of knowledge of like what kind of things are going on. Like he knows about the was it the goblins and
Mhm.
how their networks work, which awesome. Um,
You love the goblins.
yeah, yeah.
Also, I don't know if we were able to announce it last episode, but this is getting an anime adaptation
We were not able to announce it last episode. I think
and
I
a
might have
live
heard about it.
action.
I might have heard about the anime adaptation. This definitely. I'm more excited for it now than I was when I initially heard about it. I think.
Yeah, we're supposed to be getting an anime and a live action movie series of 5 movies based on it. I think casting's already gone through for the live action films too. So volumes 2 through 4 covers most of it is covering this second scenario per se, but it's the subway system under Seoul. And so the each what's happening is that obviously these little goblins are playing games to win prizes on the networks that they're running. And so we're in the subways under Seoul, and people are separated up into groups and spawned at different routes, and it's essentially a really, really large dangerous game of capture the flag, except the safety zone conditions change periodically and force combatants to fight even more.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly long arc. I mean, that does span like the vast majority of all 3 of these volumes, because we're also getting like a lot of like talk about the world and stuff and other individual characters. Um, you know,
I do like the dynamic between the protagonist of our story and the I don't remember his name, but the protagonist of the story that the guy read.
Kim Dokja.
Yeah, because it's they both like in another version of this story, in the story that he read, that is a main character. He even has like the oh yeah, I died and got sent back
Yeah, so
thing going
so
on. The
Ju
regression.
Hyuk, yeah, Ju Hyuk is the regressor, and then our main character is Kim Dokja. Yeah.
Yeah. it's like their dynamic is probably the most fascinating part of this story so far, because from the other perspective, our main character here is a complete new wild card that he has never seen in his life and is completely ruined the sense of I'm just going to keep redoing this until I get through it.
He's the wild card to Ju-hyuk, and Ju-hyuk doesn't need a wild card. He thinks he knows how to get through this particular reincarnation without any issues, you know?
Mm-hmm. And then I love that he is paranoid about that other guy dying because he doesn't know what the fuck's going to happen to him or the story if he does.
Mm-hmm. I like that our main character is building up his own little like crew of misfits and stuff where he's like, I know these people will be useful, or I already saved them and they seem to be doing a really good job, you know?
Best character. What was it? Manager someone? The manager?
Yeah. Um Also, the constellation names are getting even funkier.
Exactly what I need. Funky constellation names to remember.
I mean, to be fair, most of the time like a lot of them who they're talking about. Like a few of the constellations are not hiding their identity incredibly well.
The fucking Buddha.
Yeah, or the Monkey King.
Luffy? Look, I also could have gone for Goku there.
Yeah, but if anyone who's watching this is caught up in One Piece, whole different meaning. Um but yeah, also, and we kind of end in like a weird place. So they've entered this they're in Jurassic Park. That's what they've done. They're in Jurassic Park essentially. So inside they found like a mini instance sort of dungeon where they're basically hopping into like famous movies to try to like pursue something specifically, which is also very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where we kind of leave off though. So I don't have
Yeah.
much to say on like Jurassic Park or whatever else they get up to, other than
Yeah.
that's a motherfucking T-Rex.
Yeah. Yeah, I think rereading these books myself, books 2 and 3 are very, very heavy on almost, you know, that thing where you're like, I know that you know that I know that you know that I know this thing. So I'm gonna do this, and you know that I'm gonna do this because I know that you know that I know that you know that I know that you know that I know this thing.
That was a very like Jack Sparrow delivery of that. I'm not gonna lie. Um,
But it makes sense in context because I feel like the books 2 and 3 are very heavily focused on Kim Dokja like thinking about the characters he does know and trying to figure out how they're going to react. And then sometimes they throw a curveball and sometimes they don't. And it keeps him on his toes because he doesn't really there's no time for him to like settle into like everyone behaving as they should because they keep being human and making random decisions.
so I actually did like volumes 2 and 3 a lot. They were probably my favorite, if I'm honest, because while yes, it got very, I know that you know that I know that you know that I know that you know this thing. Um, them doing that was sort of in purpose of fleshing out the social media dynamic of this world, which I think that is probably the most fun part of this entire thing is the idea that they are dancing monkeys in this universe, that they're getting better sort of help by being more interesting or by playing to their audience. And maybe I'm only feel like maybe I find that the most interesting because we've been on YouTube for a few years now. Um
Oh, and it's I think additionally it's very the author has done a very good job of portraying both people who are very naive, and then the whole kind of range and spectrum of the people who are trying to like succeed in this world in different ways, right? Like making alliances or committing mass murder to appeal to whatever will get them out of it. Like very much that sort of human nature as incredibly variable.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, I like that kind of everyone's kind of thrown for a loop, and then some people kind of take that and continue to be like genuinely good human beings, and a large portion are like, no, I want to survive whatever this is, and I will do anything to survive.
Well, there's an interesting line. It was like either the second or third book where the main character points out that no, all of you people are not saints. He can easily assume that almost all of them murdered somebody to still
Just
be
based on the
alive.
first simulation, because the rules of the first simulation was you had to kill so many living things in the train car. So if you survived, you were either spared by someone who went on a killing spree, or you killed. Oh, no,
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 you
no. The
had to kill.
you had to kill. Yeah, the rule of the first car was that you had to commit murder.
So everybody there is almost easily assumed as murderers who would do who are doing anything to survive at this point. Like you can't really do anything worse
Yeah,
than that at this point. Not everyone's going to be as lucky to find the cricket loophole.
yeah, yeah,
So right off the bat, that's an interesting place psychologically for these characters to be in, and it makes a lot more sense why the main character is like, yeah, no, I'm not giving you guys free help.
yeah, yeah. Gosh, I love the scenarios. They're so interesting. I think this is genuinely one of the few series where I look at it and I just think that either the author is genuinely a genius, or they have put so much time and effort into designing these different like things that the characters are playing through, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And either way I can really appreciate that, because I technically Orv is not like, this is not like horror or psychological thriller, but it feels like we're watching a character in a psychological thriller or a horror, even though ours is not, you know?
Yeah, in many ways, this feels like, for me, it feels like Saw meets Hunger Games meets Danganronpa.
Yeah, the Hunger Games is definitely the one for me that I'm like, yeah.
Like
This
that everything with like the sponsors and like the way the deities are playing out here, very
yeah.
Hunger Games. But then like the here's your task. If you don't complete this task, you will die. That's Saw to me. And then the goblins and their entire like, hey guys, look at this horrifying thing that we're watching for entertainment. That's very Danganronpa. Like that feels like the weird love child between a horrific threesome between the three of them, and I'm kind of here for it.
I look, I this the great thing about this is it's on Webtoon, and you can just read past where I have the books. And I remember telling you that at the end of the first book, I was also caught up to where I had read before. Like I had not read forward. I did in fact go and read a bunch forward. Um, and holy shit, is this fantastic.
I got time
Um,
for that. I have an entire arc of One Piece I have to read still.
that is true. You do not have time for that. You will get back to Orv when
Yeah.
I get more volumes. You will get to simmer on this.
I
I
hope you
will sit
understand
back.
that right now all of my reading is for the channel. If it's not for off the shelf, it's for personal projects and making sure I'm caught up on the latest FGO shit.
Look, look. All I can say is get good, fam.
Fuck you.
My reading for the channel is less than 10% of my daily reading.
Look, I'm not gonna go below the belt here.
um, yeah, I think it's interesting seeing how much the people that he has saved rely on him like he is the sort of their messiah. Like the people he saved that are kind of like following him have very much like clung to him, you know? And I don't know if this is just the perception I'm getting, but it almost seems like there's almost sort of like a level of like if we succeed with him, our sins are absolved, and so we have to hack it out with him. We can't go off on our own. Um, which allows them to sort of be more like when he tells them to do something, they're like, oh, he's making the decision, not me. So I don't need to feel as guilty about this action that I'm taking, whatever it might be. Which I wonder if that's going to come to a head in terms of character interaction because Dokja doesn't seem like the kind of person that's going to continue to allow them to just, morally use him as an excuse for anything they do.
I think this really comes into play a lot with the characters that are coming in after, because obviously the characters in that initial train incident at this time don't seem to carry that much to be guilty about.
Hmm.
But like, who is it? Was it a sword girl that joins him? And
Yeah.
she was not from the original like set of people that was with him,
Hmm.
and she seems to be gaining that mentality.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious to see where that's gonna go because I I just can't see that being something that him and his crew put up with in the long term. You know? I feel like a agency feels like a very important part of these stories. And even Dokja is he also kind of insists on that. I mean, people have to make the decision to follow him and listen to what he's saying and do what he's telling them to do. He doesn't have some sort of ability to just make them do it. They have to make the as educated as they can choice. I also think it's interesting that he's playing a bit with the constellations.
Well,
He
that for me
knows,
is fun. Like the entire incident with the Buddha was like actually hilarious to me. Like
but
I
he,
was cackling.
but he's got to know something we don't because he's playing them and refusing to commit to anyone. What is that going to get him in the long run that committing to someone as their champion and then getting a ton of stuff from them wouldn't get him?
Well, that isn't that why the reason he's not doing it is because he basically contracted with the goblin in the gut of that fish. Because the idea is that he gets more out of the goblin having access to the goblin's resources by being this the America's top bachelor
True, but that
kind
isn't,
of figure in on the channel.
yes, but what is the long-term implication of that? Because yes, right now he's getting that. But what about the long term? The goblin is arguably not as powerful as any one of these deities. So right now, the goblin seems like the best bet because it's more open. But what about like an end game play? Like what does he know that we don't about getting to the much higher levels and stuff?
I almost wonder if at the higher levels they'll be more beholden to the deities because like a bunch of the characters that are in his crew right now are already contracted with the deities.
Yeah, they a lot of them have already picked someone who showed them favor.
And we know that these deities, say two deities don't like each other, that forms a very like you cannot like have an alliance with someone who would have that contract who's contracted with opposing deities in theory.
In theory.
Or the deity might just be like, hey, you need to kill this person.
Yeah, like what, how, because, well, thus far the deities haven't really been able to like direct people's actions. They're just rewarding people for the actions we take, or the actions that they take. So I wonder, and I'm not this far in, so I wonder if at some point the deities do become able to ask or influence certain things, or if they can't this whole time, and maybe there's something else even that's got him contracting with the goblin for now instead. It's very interesting. Um I also like that we don't. So I think a lot of authors would, with a decision like contracting with the goblins, right? A lot of authors would go into the character's position, like point of view, and then like in some sort of like thought explanation, they'd be like, ah, the reason why I'm doing this is this, and this, you know, and give us like this long explanation. But Sing and Song is pretty determined to kind of not have Dokja just drop exposition about every single one of his decisions as we go along, which is good because we're experiencing the story with Dokja, not being told everything that's going on in his head and all the decisions he's making. Like we are learning about him as we go.
It's an intelligent way of world building. I think a lot of like you get a lot of like when you're a writer, you either do one of two things. You either make your main character very knowledgeable about the world so that when things come up, that's when the audience figures it out, or you make your main character completely oblivious to the world so that as they're learning things, they're learning it with the audience. I think that it's very clear they're doing the former, the author's doing the former here. And I do think that really helps set the tone of this story. It makes this world feel a lot more complex because we know we get a lot more insight into the different like the different wrinkles and dynamics as they come up.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting that a large portion of Dokja's choices are dedicated to like following his main character around in some way. He's like, I need to make sure that this idiot survives and that we both get to a certain point of the story. And so, like, I'm associated with him, but we're not associates. There's an interesting dynamic between them, which we already touched on earlier, but it's very much on the part of Dokja. He needs Ju-hyuk because Ju-hyuk is powerful and OP, and he's got main character syndrome. And Ju-hyuk sees Dokja as a wild card, and so they have very different opinions of one another and a different dedication to keeping up with one another or keeping tabs on one another.
I do. We haven't really this this character, our main character, has seen the end of this story, and we've never been told downright how the story is supposed to end.
Yeah, once he figured out what which reincarnation we were on, he's dedicated to finishing that particular reincarnation. So that's what I'm saying is like our character is knowledgeable, but the author is not lore dumping that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge to get us to understanding faster so that we understand all of Dokja's actions the minute he makes them. He's letting us try to figure out his actions as we go based on the knowledge we've given.
Because and I wonder if that plays into his relationship with our like the regression
Mm.
main character, because the original story's main character, he's made very clear by our protagonist here that he is not a good person. Like he's not trust this guy not to just kill him on the spot by this point in the story. So I wonder if where this story ends up influences how he's approaching this guy.
Yeah, I think because to live that many regressions, I go through this story that many times. I think the thing you have to realize for that to happen, Ju Hyuk is a mass murderer. For the story to play out as many times as it has, and in the same ways. Like he knew he had to slaughter his train car the minute that he regressed. Well, didn't they say that he like slaughtered basically his entire train car? Didn't leave anyone left alive, right? So he's the protagonist, but traditionally when you're thinking of these really overpowered protagonists, you're thinking of characters who are very much on the leave nobody behind spectrum of morality. And he's been broken, as Dokja describes. Like he might have been that way once, but he is no longer that way because of how many times he's been reset back to the beginning. And I love if those episodes are done well in like TV shows, right? The ones where you're in a time loop, right? Can be fascinating, right? Seeing the deterioration of the one character who's outside of the time loop's mental state as everything they try fails again and again and again. Um, so this is seeing the after effects of someone who has been stuck in a regression loop, constantly failing, everyone they are friends with dying, having to murder people on a daily basis. He's broken for all intents and purposes.
You're not a fan of this series, so I'm not going to press you too much for your opinion on this, but it does. There are with ReZero, which is that it's that same sort of concept of, oh yeah, you die and you have to redo this shit, not from the beginning like the Orv regressor, but
Yeah.
still there are like alternate ending stories of that, like stories that are written about alternate endings from that author, that just have that main character, like have the ReZero main character Subaru just completely broken, and it's very clear he is just a villain at that point. Um, so that's what it's like seeing this main character to be like, this is someone beaten down probably by constant betrayal or constant failure to the point where he is operating on a very mechanical, uh like, this is how I clear this scenario, this person is going to, they might be good right now but they are going to stab me in the back in the future given long enough for them to be broken in by the world.
Go here, kill him, kill them, do this thing, get this item, kill them. They will betray you. Like it's almost he's playing his way through the scenarios in a paint by numbers at this
He's like,
point.
oh, if I don't kill this character is going to kill this character in the future, kill
Mm,
baby Hitler as soon as possible.
yeah. Yeah. God, this series just has the most fascinating commentary on like psychology and morality and just human error. And I don't think it's even necessarily, it's not even all intentional. It's just so well done. I fucking love it.
I'm still really curious to see where this goes. I know this series is over, right? It's finished.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes because I can see where the status, I can see the status quo forming, but obviously like in a series like this, I would hope they don't like, it doesn't just become, oh, here's another scenario, main character and regressor butt heads a little bit, and we just do that for like 3 or 4 or 5 volumes. I'd hope that they mix things up a fair bit.
Fair. I very much agree on that front. Um, well, the good news is Volume Five's already come in. I don't know when the couple volumes after that will, but if I were to do math, and we wanted to get to this sooner rather than later, Webtoon is an option here. So you can read this on Webtoon. I do believe up to a certain point the story is just available. I could be wrong. Um, who knows? With the ended series, they can get a little weird there. Sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. Um, I'm just double checking it right now. So yeah, on on Webtoon, it's available up to episode 242. Um, because I don't believe I think the Webtoon adaptation is still ongoing in its translation into English. The original story is done, but the adaptation is not quite completed. I do believe, yeah. So the story itself ended in 2020. The adaptation to Webtoon started the year that I think it started the year that the light novel ended. So it's a lot newer. So the Webtoon is not completed yet. But you can read significantly further ahead than where we currently are. I think the math that we've done would make the argument that each one of these books is no more than I think 10 to 15 chapters, sometimes a little bit more, so 10 to 20 at the most. Which and this is nowhere near where the current series is sitting. Yeah. So there's plenty more to read for any of our audience that is interested in continuing this, either before we get to it, if you're kind of consuming this through our content, which I highly doubt, or on your own if you did not know where it was hosted outside of pirating sites. It is also available on every single pirating site. Like this is one of the biggest manhwas of the genre. Like the Solo Leveling is large, right? Solo Leveling got an anime adaptation first, but arguably this is actually more popular than Solo Leveling. Just full stop. So this is popular, it is everywhere. um, with that being said, I don't know what's next. You don't know what's next. The audience doesn't know what's next.
Actually, I probably
Um,
know what's next.
look. Sometimes we know what's next. But we'll see you with whatever is next the next time that we have an off the shelf. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Bye.